A cookie. I will call the meeting to order at 7:00 p.m. Jennifer, can we please have a roll call?
Christian,
Yes.
Miss Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Miss Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Unical,
Yes.
Miss Yu.
Yes.
Excellent. Is this where you want me to note that Jamie? We do have a board member leaving early this evening. Jamie Shu is going to be departing at 8:15. This will not change our quorum situation. Moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items that people want to remove from the consent agenda and into new business?
Do we have to put the schedule? Oh, so just the scheduling of on the June meeting or the meetings.
Fiscal year 26 meeting dates.
Thank you. Fiscal year 26 meeting dates.
And anything else that anyone wants to pull out? Before we approve the consent agenda, there is one change to the agenda. The minutes reflected that the board approved covering the difference in the IPBC increase in health insurance. So we're going to amend the minutes to reflect that the board did not take action at the previous meeting. With that change, is there a motion to approve the minutes? Do we have to approve the minutes and the agenda or the whole?
First, we have to approve the minutes as corrected.
Goodness. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the March, I don't know what the meeting date was, March 20th meeting as corrected?
So seconded.
Thank you. And roll call vote on that.
We can do a voice vote.
Okay, voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Great. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
And a roll call vote on that one.
Miss Christian,
Yes.
Miss Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Miss Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Unical,
Yes.
Miss Yu.
Yes.
And because we are on a roll here, we are also going to make a recommendation to defer discussion of closed session items listed under both old business and new business until the end of the meeting so they can be considered together in a single closed session. Can I get a motion to approve the deferral of those discussion items?
So moved.
Thanks, Janet.
Seconded.
Thank you. And a roll call vote.
Miss Christian,
Yes.
Miss Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Miss Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Unical,
Yes.
Miss Yu.
Yes. Moving into public comment. Hello, Bryce, welcome. I assume that you again do not want to make public comment. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Okay, moving into staff reports.
All right, I'm gonna pop up to the front. Oh, we're getting rid of the slides. Oh, I do want to just note a couple of things that are not on this slide deck. One is that tonight is the GBN Pitch Night. So annually, the library hosts students who have been creating products, and it's similar to a Shark Tank kind of situation. They're backed by local business owners and entrepreneurs, and some of those actually go on to be real businesses for the students. So it's very exciting, and we welcome them here tonight. And I also wanted to just give a quick update on the IMLS situation. So the Institute of Museum and Library Services is a federal institution that was eliminated through DOGE. Federal funding and grants through the IMLS program have been frozen. And many institutions over the last couple of weeks have received letters that their grants were canceled. This is not the end of this. There are a lot of things happening in the legal system to fight this. So the American Library Association did challenge the ending of IMLS in court. There is also a lawsuit from several states' attorney generals, including Illinois' Attorney General Kwame Raoul. about the destruction of IMLS along with two other institutions, the Minority Business Development Agency and the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. And so it is, if it is something that is important to you, it is always great to reach out to your lawmakers and let them know that you would like what you would like to see in terms of federal funding and IMLS being reestablished. And I did also want to note that the Illinois Assembly had approved in the House a bill for protecting library staff from threats and harassment, and the Senate a bill for creating grants for security upgrades such as security cameras, alarms, checkpoints. As you all know, we are engaged in a process right now to upgrade our security technology, and also, as you are all aware, it is very expensive. So this is House Bill 2747 and Senate Bill 1550. They both moved through the first stage. Since one's House and one's Senate, it's now it goes to the opposite body for approval. And so in the coming weeks, we will be getting communication out about reaching out to legislators, and that's something, Kater, I will share with all of you when there's more information on when they're moving to their next step within the Illinois legislation. So, any questions on that? All right. I also wanted to share our strategic plan quarterly report updates with all of you. In the packet, you saw the strategic plan activity plan. It looks like this. This is something that the board looked at maybe 5 months ago. And so just as a reminder, we have our strategic directions. Each direction has a few goals underneath that. And then from there, we've identified activities that we want to target. We are in year 1 of our strategic plan, and this is our 3rd quarterly report. This is reporting on the progress from January 2025 to March 2025. So it is not an exhaustive report on all of the activities that we've accomplished, either on the spreadsheet that was shared earlier or just in general that serve the goals that we've established within the strategic plan. But again, it's just a snapshot of the last 4 months. I did also want to just note the strategic plan itself is a collaborative effort between library staff and the board, and I appreciate all of your continued support moving us through this. And I want to note that it's a living document. So I'm going to note some things in this presentation that were definitely identified as activities to serve our goals, as well as a few things that were not listed as activities that also have served our goals. And I think that is the beauty of having a living document as a strategic plan, that as we respond to our community's needs in the moment, we are also keeping our strategic directions and goals in mind. So on to just a refresher on what those strategic directions are, which are connect with our community, build an inclusive culture, and create spaces to belong. And our goals for our first strategic direction are to position ourselves as the community center for information needs and provide exposure to new ways to experience looking at the world. So if we look at our first strategic direction, connect with our community, staff have been working really hard at our day-to-day tasks, which definitely serve as a great connection with the community, whether it be things like our programs, our collections. We've added thousands of books and media and digital resources over the past 4 months. And we are evolving what we need to offer in that way based on community needs, community feedback. We also hosted our winter reading challenge this past quarter and had nearly 2,000 participants from babies to adults. We continue to be inventive with how we connect with our community. Our collaboratory or makerspace is certainly one of the most inventive spaces in public libraries. People are creating in those spaces all the time. Another place I wanted to point out is our Library of Things. That collection is very popular and contains a lot of non-traditional circulating items that folks can use, anything from an inflatable projector to a Wi-Fi hotspot. So things you might not think of in a traditional library that are serving our community's needs. We did achieve one of our activities pretty early in the year, which was to launch auditorium rentals. And as we noted in February, we did have our first rental at that time, and it went very well. And now we are looking at, since it is still year one, we're looking at ways that we can improve that service, taking in feedback from folks that have expressed interest in renting the auditorium and looking at ways to possibly have a reduced fee at some point for events that don't require a large technology setup. This past quarter, we've done a lot with civic engagement. We hosted a Northbrook Trustees Candidates Forum in March. Commissioner Scott Britton had office hours here at the library. We provided space for districts 227 and 28 to share information about their referendums. We've collaborated with local organizations, including hosting the State of the Village address, which drew nearly 180 attendees, and co-presented with Rotary vaccine awareness film screening. We partnered with Greenbrier School to bring a spring story walk to the community, and we welcome back Finals Cafe for high school students. And as always, our display cases offer community partners ways to make themselves more visible to folks coming into the library. So lots of ways that we've connected with the community. Our next strategic direction is to build an inclusive culture, and the goals that we are trying to meet in that area is to align staff roles and responsibilities, to improve decision-making processes across the organization, foster a culture of shared growth and learning, and embed equity, diversity, and inclusion in operations. And so there has been a lot of work done with that. As a preview, Becky's going to be presenting on our pay equity audit, which was completed this month. And that is to ensure fair compensation across roles in the library. We also did a Q4 pulse survey in collaboration with our DEI consultant, Lily Zhang, as well as a 2-question follow-up to identify actionable items for next steps for leadership to take to reach some of our goals laid out in the Zhang report, which was done in October 2023. And I'm happy to report that the EDI committee is collaborating on planning some of Staff Development Day. Another way that we're building inclusive culture is with our facilities work, technical services, and circulation. In all 3 of those departments, we have had job openings and looked at departmental structure and made some decisions, including outsourcing facilities management to ABM, as well as making adjustments in technical services workflows to streamline some of those processes. And then finally, on this strategic direction, we are, again, these are fake numbers. You might remember that from last month. Please don't look too closely at these numbers, but we are working on a monthly statistics dashboard with an outside firm, Fifth Star Collection, and we'll be bringing that to the board to review next month. And Mallory Edgar from Fifth Star will be here for that. Our last strategic direction is to create spaces that belong. And our goals in this area are to reimagine our spaces to increase flexibility and opportunities to explore connection, cultivate an inclusive and welcoming library environment, improve access to facilities, programs, and materials to better serve all populations. And so over the last quarter, we have been using this room very frequently. Now that it's become a more flexible space, it's being used frequently for hybrid library programs as well as community meetings. And the versatility is helping to meet the evolving needs for patrons and staff. We also have had some great programs that meet our goal to be an inclusive and welcoming environment, including a Lunar New Year event this past February and hosting our GBN transition student volunteers. No board meeting would be complete without some talk of the budget. So I just wanted to call out what an inclusive process our budget process has become over the past few years. We are very careful to include staff feedback, manager input, and board input when developing the budget and making sure that it reflects our values and priorities. It's not a perfect system, but it's definitely one that we are always improving to make sure that we're meeting these strategic priorities. And then one of our activities was to launch Find More Illinois, which is a resource sharing service through Rails. It is an addition to our interlibrary loan services, and that launched on January 27th. So I want to thank our circulation staff for getting that going. And then a couple things coming soon in our spaces. Our elevator modernization project might be complete at some point. Anna will have an update on that in a minute. And then our parking lot repaving and improved and accessible parking will be finishing up. We did work, just as a reminder, with an ADA consultant to identify best spots for ADA accessible parking as part of this project. We're working on adding multilingual wayfinding signs in youth services, and those should be coming soon. And then our RFP for security technology upgrades will be going out in the next couple months, and we're hoping to bring something to the board this summer to approve. So any questions on the strategic plan quarterly updates?
First of all, thank you for that update. It was comprehensive and really thoughtful. The problem I have is how does the public know that the strategic, because in the application processes, you could see a lot of people talking about the strategic plan. And I don't even know that some people are aware that we have one.
Sure.
And certainly until you put together this summary and your presentation, there'd be no way to know all these things have been going on and that some of the goals are ongoing, some of them have been met, and I don't know, but I think if there's a way to summarize so that everybody knows that such good things are going on.
Yeah, I'm having a couple of that. Well, the strategic plan is posted on our website, so we could post some updates on that page. I also think in the newsletter, we could do an update in the director's letter, or generally on page 2, we do some news and updates. So I love that idea. Yeah.
And I think that if there's a column or even a small blurb in each newsletter about the strategic plan and a focus, just so that people know that, yes, indeed, we have one and that it's alive and well.
Yeah, I would second that. I would say have a regular
Mhm.
corner. I mean, it doesn't have to be this level of detail, but what it could do is say, for more detail, please go to our website. And when I last checked, and this was a very long time ago, you hadn't yet sort of updated the website with all the new strategic plan and all that stuff. And I need to go back and look, but is it being updated regularly? I mean, not every day. but
It's
like
data.
4
It is
months
not.
a year.
It is not being updated regularly.
would-
It's just
You might
plan.
I would recommend that you are posting quarterly. In fact, I mean, this work is already done for this board meeting. And in fact, it's in the board packet for anybody to see. You could just recycle it onto I mean, I'm not suggesting reinvent the wheel. I'm suggesting another link through to your report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great
It's easy enough
suggestion.
to do.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you. Any other questions, suggestions? Okay, Anna has a couple of facilities updates.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna have better news on the elevator modernization project. We had an inspection on Friday and it passed. And they kind of gave it to us and we turned it on, and then over the weekend it They believe they know what the issue is and they'll be. But because it happened so quickly after they turned it over, I'm pushing for them to come and fix it so that we don't have to go to our maintenance company. So, and then my other update is, right at the end of March, we finalized the contract review with ABM and got that over to them. And yesterday, Kelly and Dan McQuinn and I we had a discussion with two candidates. We can't say interview because they're not our employees, but we had a discussion with two candidates and we liked one of them really well. So ABM is going to be talking with him and hopefully he will start at the beginning of May. So that'll be
That's
great.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So a little bit of bad news, a little bit of good news.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing the balance.
Well, hopefully it's all good news on Monday.
Yes. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Any questions for Anna? Okay, moving into board member reports.
I have a quick comment.
Yeah.
I attended the Sunday, April 6th J2 Strings in the auditorium, which by the way was really wonderful. But I was struck and impressed. I'm not good at names, but the staff member who introduced the J2 Strings group, she did a really good job and she described how the former music director has left. I think she's gone to Australia or New Zealand.
Oh, you're talking about Madison.
Yeah. But the way she described and how respectful she was of the lady who's moved on just showed kind of the sense of camaraderie that you folks have. And I could tell the audience, the members that go to those events regularly also appreciate it. So I just wanted to point out that your staff member that kicked it off did such a good job with appreciating the past and the director that moved on. So thank you.
I'll pass that along. I don't know who it was, but I'll find out.
Yeah. I've seen her before. She's at the circulation desk. I'm just not good with names on the second floor sometimes.
Okay.
I stopped by the Friends of the Library book sale, which was hopping even on Sunday, the last day, and Meryl was keeping very busy. She and I had a brief conversation about her coming to the May or June board meeting to give us an update on the work that the Friends is doing. So stay tuned for that. I like to, invite special guests to keep things spicy here in our meetings. I know we've acknowledged this off camera, but we also need to acknowledge that it is Patrick's last board meeting with us. People who are watching the board meeting are adoring fans in the community, may not realize that Patrick is the reason that they're able to watch our meetings online after the fact and for years keep us live streaming until we stopped that process. And while Patrick is certainly probably very appreciative to reclaim the third Thursday of every month. We are also very grateful for his work in helping connect us with the community beyond this room. So Patrick, thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you.
Any other board member reports?
This time.
Okay, let's move into unfinished business, and we are going to start with the IPBC health insurance. We started this conversation last month and we're not able to reach any type of resolution. We asked for some updated scenarios and information, and I believe Anna has a slide deck. Anna and Becky have a slide deck. There's a slide deck.
There's always a silence.
Much to Anna, just. Hold on, I gotta go do what I do. Well, it's okay. We are going to be talking about IPBC insurance plan changes and options for consideration. So in my memo, we tried to give some history just to make sure that everything was summarized in one place. In February, we were notified by IPBC that some changes that the insurance was going to increase substantially, like almost 16%. And they recommended that we make some changes to our plans to reduce the increase. And do you want to go over those changes, Becky?
So these were I think this summarizes the plan design changes to our PPO plan. So they were back in the day in February, there were two plans, one PPO plan, one HMO plan, both offered through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. In order to reduce some of the,
This is not the biggest. Sorry.
that's fine.
No, but that's okay.
It's okay.
Sure.
We'll go with it. We made some changes, well, you all approved some changes to the plan design for the PPO, which ended up resulting in a 4.5% decrease in the premium. So we did see some substantial savings there. And then,
This number should be 80%.
Yeah.
That number should be
yeah,
70%.
it was a 10% decrease, yeah.
And there was a change to the HMO here.
Yes, so we were informed that Advocate Medical Group was leaving our HMO Illinois plan, HMOI is the for short. And so we were given the option by IPVC, who's our benefits risk pool, that we could add Blue Advantage HMO at no cost to the library. So in order to maintain Advocate for our employees who use that network, we added another HMO plan, Blue Advantage. So come July 2025, we're going to have two HMO plans, one PPO plan. And of course, as we've discussed previously, it's a top priority of Anna, myself, and Kate. I'll speak for Kate, even though she's not here, that we are going to be doing a thorough recognizance of all of our benefits to come back to the board. So we're representing a really full, comprehensive, competitively priced plan for our staff and for the library for next year.
So
Go ahead.
then in March, we came to you and said the projected increase for the PPO was 11.85%. And we presented three options for the library to cover all of the increase in cost to staff, to cover half of the increased cost for staff, or not to cover any of the increased cost to staff.
And if I can,
Oh.
and this, if costs were going to be covered by the library, it was clear this is only going to be for 1 year, not for
Right.
perpetuity.
And based upon a discussion that we had with nearby libraries, those libraries were passing all of their increases to staff, but none of them were above 10%. So then, you all had asked for some historical rate data. In doing that, we learned that the actual increase to the insurance is only going to be 9.55%. It is not going to be 11.85%. So, the increase is going to be 9.55%. And this shows how the insurance has increased over the years. And you can see there that it actually went down year over year. So this is the PPO. Oh, okay.
Oh, these are the percentages.
Oh, and this is the percentages. So those were dollar amounts, and these are the percentages showing, they were pretty small. And then the increase for this coming year is going to be 9.55. And then the average increase over these 5 years is 3.34%. I also have data on the HMO. So these are the dollar increases for the HMO rates. And then here's the percent for the HMO. You also asked for us to tell you how many people participated in each plan. The PPO, we have 27 staff members who have single coverage. We have 2 staff members who have single plus child. We have 6 staff members who have single plus spouse. And we have 4 staff members who have family coverage. For the HMO, we have 2 staff who have single coverage, 1 staff member who has single plus spouse, and 3 staff members who have family. So
The rest of them, we have more staff than that.
we only offer insurance to our full-time employees.
And most opt in, I think only 1 or 2 opt out.
We have, I think 2 or 3 opt out. Yeah, two. And the dental rates, this is the increase for dental. And I think it's easier to look at the percentage. The increases, it's actually gone down. So this year there is a 7.6% increase, but over the years it's gone down year over year. So we, I am presenting 3 options for your consideration. The first option would be no additional support. Library pays 0, the employee pays all of the increase. Option 2 would be split the increase 50-50 with staff. And option 3 would be cover the average, like let the employee pay the average increase and library pay the remaining. So what I tried to do here is I tried to say, okay, in fiscal year 25, if a single person who's somebody who had single insurance, this is their gross pay, this is their net pay. And with the increase, if they were paying 100% of the increase and we were giving a 4% salary increase, this is what their net pay would look like. And this is all estimates, so nobody can hold me to this. And then in the next example, if it was split 50-50, it would look like that. And then in the last one, it would be over a 4% increase. So I did that for single. I also did it for family coverage. So if a staff member who had family coverage, this is their gross pay, this is their take-home pay. If they had to pay 100% of their health insurance increase, this is what their pay would look like. If we paid half, and again, if we paid 3.34% of it, or if they paid 3.34% and we paid the rest. I also did this analysis for HMO. So HMO single, you can kind of see how their net pay would be affected. And I also did it for family. This is how their net pay would be affected. So do you have any questions?
Well, I have a comment that I mean, obviously in the different scenarios, there's a slightly different bottom line there. Surprisingly, they're not that different.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not. And they are different, but not wildly different. So just for consideration, I would say that what we need to think about perhaps is less about the actual dollars, since they're kind of the same, and more what kind of precedent we want to set. So whichever one we choose, look at, I mean, this is PPO, so look, 861, 864, 864.
And
Now,
this is
again,
the majority of
yeah.
the staff. These are 27 of the staff members who.
So whichever
insurance.
option
How
we
you say that.
chose, dollar wise, is not making an enormous difference. But again, I think so that's actually very useful, Anna, and thank you, Becky, for doing this, because to me, and maybe it's just me, it makes me think, okay, what I actually need to be thinking about here is less dollars than what kind of precedent are we setting for, moving forward. And I know that we've talked a number of times about, whatever, if we took on the entire amount, then it would only be for a year. But I think Mara made an excellent point last time that whatever you say, precedents become sort of standard operating procedures. And that's, I think, maybe the way we want to think about this. So that's just my comment. This is really useful. Thank you.
I think another, important thing to note is the actual increase is not over 10%.
Significantly, that's right.
That was
It's a lot
a
less than we were
huge
talking about.
realization to me when
Yeah.
I learned that,
Yeah.
when I was doing all of this work.
I didn't pay close enough attention, so I'm sorry for repeating.
Yeah.
But on the average, from one year to the next, what is the percentage approximately, just on a normal basis?
Well, I mean,
There it is, right, I hadn't paid close enough.
so,
attention.
this year it was 7.74, and then it was only 3.3, and then it actually decreased.
And the,
But if
the
you look at-
average is.
The average is
quite
right in the
low.
far right
It's like
column.
3.4 is quite low for.
For a 5-year period. This was a pretty high year, but that was awesome.
back to sort of setting precedent, it's just important to have a really good, given that this year it's higher than everyone wants, but this is a mirror of society. Just having a good FAQ, making sure that folks, they have the resources here, obviously, but the concept of just ensuring that folks realize that it's happening everywhere and that you have a kind of an FAQ to refer to that, from an advocate standpoint.
Can you explain what IPBC is doing like they're coming?
Yeah.
Talking or the HMO?
Yes, so I think the FAQ is a great idea and one that we should always lean into education for our staff on what's going on, like just globally in the marketplace in the US, but we're also having IPBC come on site on May 1st. They're doing 2 different sessions and they're bringing representation from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois and also Delta Dental for anyone who wants to talk dental insurance. And a lot of our staff are very much, because of all this happened this year, they're very interested in learning more about their benefits. And so in addition to that meeting, we're going to send even more information out to staff to really educate them. And we've told staff already that we're going to keep looking into this further. I know Kate's mentioned a high deductible health plan. So the education is, like we always say here, continuous learning. So Lori and myself are always available to our team. IPBC has been an excellent partner, like just navigating, through the situation. The plan design changes that you approved back in February, March. I mean, that took off 4.5%. That was like huge to make those changes to really bring this, even though 9.5 is still high, it's but much more, palatable than having 16 or 15, 12%. But yeah, it'll come down to, this has been enlightening for staff to think about. I've got staff even coming to my office asking about the HMO plan, asking about the PPO plan. They did not think about it before. So they're thinking about it in new ways and maybe not for the best reason, but they're really educating themselves. So I agree, like we can do more with an FAQ page for our staff
And I
partner
think
with
May the
IPBC.
1st, staff will be able to
Yeah.
ask questions about PPO
Mhm.
versus HMO and the differences and really
Yeah.
get an understanding of what that means.
I think for me, and I certainly don't want to cut off conversation here, but knowing that the plan design changes resulted in a 4.5% decrease and that we are moving into open enrollment and staff can change their plan to better fit their family's needs, knowing that this increase is coming. And the conversation about precedent, I'm having a harder time imagining the library covering any of this. And I realize, again, for all of our adoring fans watching, AKA the staff, that's uncomfortable. But I am concerned about precedent and the fiscal responsibility that we take on if we say, well, this was unprecedented. What happens if it's unprecedented again in future years? I'd rather focus on these educational opportunities and offering the plans that make most sense and making sure that staff are opting into the plan that makes sense for their financial situation and their family.
I agree.
Yeah.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'm always ready for a motion.
All right, can I move to approve option 1? Is that enough?
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
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 Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Becker Bishop.
Yes.
Ms. Unical.
Yes.
Ms. Hughes.
Yes.
You want me to stay up and help you or are you good?
Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you
especially
very
thank you to
much for
Anna
that.
and
Yes,
Becky.
thank you both.
Detailed.
Really, really
They're
helpful.
not even listening back.
Yeah.
We are thanking them, even if they're not listening to us.
We're expressing gratitude to the
It's
team.
gratitude.
Stay up there, Annette. You're welcome.
All right.
I was happy that I was able to put it into a way that it made sense.
I'm sure that slide deck makes it into your retirement party someday. Okay, moving into the Schaumburg Library Tour.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody who responded to the doodle poll. Okay. It looks like July 10th would work for most, but not all, as would July 24th, most, but not all. So Janet was not available on the 10th, Barbara was not available on the 24th. I don't know when was.
I think I'm available for both.
To make myself available.
Yeah, both work for me.
So do we want to try for one of those dates, or would we like to go back to doodle?
Pick a date.
No, I would, I don't want everything built around one person. I literally will be not in town on the 10th, so I can't do anything to change that. But if the 10th works for everybody else.
And I feel the same way
Yeah.
about the 24th, so.
When do we
whatever.
need to confirm with Schaumburg?
We have time.
I'm wondering if it makes sense to get through the trustee appointment process so that person can also weigh
Oh,
in.
right.
And
Sure.
that might tip the scale one direction.
Good idea.
Bryce, were you on the doodle? You were, okay.
Look at me using common sense today.
I love it.
Fire here. Okay, and we are not going into closed session yet, so we are going to move into new business. And Becky, you're back up with the pay equity loss. Hope you enjoyed.
I love the way it was. Should just stay up there.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So I am here. Good evening to you all again and to all our board members and Bryce, thank you for joining us. So I am here today to talk about the pay equity audit. As you can see, I already presented a special all-staff meeting on this very topic very recently. So I am very happy to present the findings of this audit with you all. I know this is about the audit and not about me, but as May 1st is approaching, which is my 1-year anniversary, I can't really think of a much better way than I would like to kind of bookend my year by being able to present this audit to you all. It was something that was brought up in my interview. It was a priority from Kate, and I'm very big on accountability. So I'm very glad that I was able to, accomplish this kind of first for the library. And to keep the learning going, I am planning on, sharing what was learned with other peer libraries, because within my HR circle of fellow library HR professionals, they've asked like, oh, you're doing that for the first time? Tell us how it goes. And so now I think that learning should continue with our peers, and someone has to be first, and it might as well be for a public library, right? Okay. So what I'm covering. Click. Oh, okay. We'll click there. All right. What I'm covering today is really an overview of the foundation of this audit, how it was conducted, what were the key findings, and what is our path forward. As I've said to the staff, there is no check the box when it comes to equity, and there's no check the box when it comes to equity audits. Really, this is something that needs to be done recurrently in order to sustain the equity, to keep the progress going. In your board packet, you received a executive summary and a fuller report. The executive summary was Kate's idea. It's a much more kind of, I think, great way overview of what was done. And then for people who want to learn more about the methodology, kind of the thought process I took, this 20-something page document is for you. Click. All right, so let's talk about the foundations of the pay equity audit. I'm going to zoom out for a little bit, so bear with me. Because really, when I approached this audit and doing my research, so I, consulted with Lily Zhang, I consulted with HR Source. I read lots of articles from US employment scholars, DEI practitioners, and how to approach a pay equity audit. And I was very pleased to find that so much of the kind of pre-work to this audit had really been spearheaded by yourselves in this room. So back in 2022, if we can go back way back when to that point, you all approved a compensation philosophy and strategy, which is really, I think, a phenomenal document that you don't see in many organizations, where you're really setting the blueprint, kind of the set of guiding principles for how we want to compensate our most valuable assets here at the library, which is our staff. And then, the end goal is to attract, reward, and retain the top talent that we can. And we're very proud of that fact. After that philosophy was approved back in the fall of 2022, and I can't take credit for any of this work because this all predates me, Kate and the leadership team and HR team, they updated all the job descriptions, and they also underwent a compensation benchmarking and salary structure assessment with HR Source. And that really, when you're going into an equity audit, the structure was in place in terms of where people fall within the salary schedule. And that was huge as a great starting point for this audit itself. Okay. So then how did I actually, go about conducting this audit? So first for me was setting for staff really clear objectives
things that I hoped to achieve through conducting this audit. Number one being to ensure that employees who perform similar work are paid fairly and consistently. So we have a really sound salary structure. We have 10 different pay grades that are in use, and employees have been benchmarked and their compensations their job descriptions have been analyzed by HR Source and others, and those positions have been put into a particular kind of structure. And so putting my kind of auditor hat on, thinking about how are we applying our compensation to our wanted structure. I used to report to a director of finance back at a Glencoe Park District, and something that he would always say in his auditor had was trust but verify. So I came into the job trusting that we hold this value of EDI. We want to embed it in our operations. It's core to what we do. It's part of our strategic plan. But as an auditor, you kind of have to step back and say, okay, how are we actually applying this in real life? So I've told staff, pay differences will exist. All of our librarians are not paid the same salary, but it's critical as any HR practitioner who's taking this audit is to determine through data analysis that any pay differences can be attributed to job-related factors. So what I mean by that is pay differences can exist between people who have different levels of seniority, different levels of performance, different skill sets. But those differences need to be attributed to those factors. It's critical to number two's point that disparities in pay should not be linked to employee demographics such as age, gender, or race, ethnicity. In terms of these demographics specifically, I needed to get data that employees had self-identified. So that's why these particular demographics are called out, because employees have self-identified, this information to us in their employment paperwork through their background check. It was very critical that this was self-identifiable, voluntarily given data, which I had. Okay. Another objective is that this audit should not exist within a vacuum. It needs to continue. It needs to inform our long-term compensation strategies, kind of where we go from here. How do we make sure that any audit that's done is reinforcing our commitment to equity? And fourth, also reinforcing our commitment to transparency and fairness. Okay, so into the fun part, into the numbers. I collected data, comprehensive data from 107 employees. I did it as of February 15th, 2025. I did have to set a cutoff point because I had to do a deeper dive into the analysis. I did exclude 3 temporary roles. These are roles, in facilities that did not exist previously. They're not part of our structure, as well as a temporary cataloging position. I reviewed many sets of data, but calling out just a few big things, looking within the pay grades themselves, looking at people's job titles, their tenure, their demographics, their education, their other skills and experiences, their promotion history. And I did this, I collected all this data and analyzed it this winter. All right, in terms of the statistical analysis tools, I could talk about this for a much longer period of time, but keeping it high level, one of the key kind of tenets of pay equity audits is looking for trends, looking for patterns in the data. So you're trying to figure out the relationship between different variables. For example, the relationship between pay and your tenure in the organization. How closely are those factors linked together? And you can put it through different regression analyses to determine if there is a mathematical link between those two variables. You can also do different kind of visual data representations through things like box and whisker plots to visually compare pay across gender or ethnicity and race by visually seeing what is the median pay, what are the kind of the outliers, the extremes in pay between people of different ethnic groups or different genders or ages. And then finally, comp ratio. It's one of my new favorite words. Comparative ratio is what it stands for, and you're measuring the relationship between an employee's base pay versus what their established pay target is. From the compensation philosophy, you all set out that we should be paying at the 50th percentile market rate as our target pay. So we want to get as close to that pay target for our staff or exceed, of course, as much as possible. A comp ratio is expressed as a percentage typically between 80 to 120. A 100% score would basically mean that your pay is perfectly aligned with the target market rate. So our internal goal is to get as close to 100 and above as possible. So I looked at the compa ratio across all the different pay grades as well. All right. All right, so what did I find, right? So there's a graphic on the next slide, which is in the executive summary. It's a bit of a primitive graphic. I'm not as, great at graphics as others, but I wanted to represent really the balance, like what is it kind of in balance, what is fair, and what might be a little bit kind of unbalanced. So the biggest takeaway for me was that there are no disparities that are apparent based on age, gender identity, or race ethnicity. So any pay differences that I saw were attributed to job-related factors. The most strong factor was tenure, the time in that specific position, which is really was not a surprise to me, just based on our internal policy of people who've worked here over time have just steadily grown their pay. And as we've established, retaining staff is one of our top goals. And so when you retain staff, you reward them for their service. And it's something that, tends to just happen as a trend. The biggest question next is really, what is this little check mark over here mean? This part is a little harder to explain with a simple graph, which is why I want to be in front of you all to explain it more contextually. So the big takeaway, going back a little bit, is that overall compensation at the library, I am pleased to uncover, follows a very clear, fair, transparent process consistently across all the pay grades. But when I wanted to think a bit more carefully and do a secondary supplemental analysis, when I was starting to do this pay equity audit, I get some feedback from staff saying, to what degree are you thinking about my salary history at the library over time? They were specifically thinking, if I started at the library in 2019, how can you kind of guarantee was my pay fair back then compared to what it is now? That's a very tricky thing to answer for a couple of reasons. Primarily because when you're doing a pay equity audit, I'm looking at this particular moment in time with the data that I have in front of me. So I'm looking at how are you being paid for the position that you're in right now compared to others around you who are also performing similar work. So really it's a snapshot of a moment in time. But I thought about that question very deeply about how would you factor in compensation history into that equation. And when I talked to our consultant, Lily Zhang, when I looked at to research, they did tell me to proceed with caution. You want to maintain a clear scope of what you're doing. You want to be mindful of scope creep, expanding your scope too far. But if there's a clear defined rationale, I wanted to do a supplementary analysis, which I hope that you will kind of agree that there is a basis to, which is that I took a closer look at people who were hired between the fall of 2022 to May 2024. And so why did I pick those dates? It goes back to kind of to the foundation of the compensation philosophy. As part of that philosophy, the board approved that we wanted to hire people between the minimum to the pay target. We wanted to hire people acknowledging them for their skills, experience, and pay them somewhere in between that range. So I thought, okay, in terms of history, I think that is a reasonable test of looking at back how are people paid from that time when the board approved that policy. And what I found was pretty interesting to me. I found that 68% of people who were hired or changed positions in that time frame were hired at the very minimum of that pay range. There was a general trend of paying mostly 2/3 at the bottom, which was a little surprising knowing that the board did approve that policy of paying between the minimum and the pay target. Not entirely surprising because I know there was a lot going on at that time. The benchmarking process was happening. And that was just the general trend that they were doing. But when I looked into it further and I looked at those 28 individuals, I did identify 8 employees for a pay adjustment where I feel that they should have been placed when they were hired in relation to their comparable peers in those positions. And I should stop. Why did I stop in May 2024? Not to make it about me again, but that's when I was hired. And if Kate were here, she would tell you that I absorbed myself for the first month in all things Norfolk Public Library. And I said pretty early on, I believe in the phrase like start as you mean to carry on. So really from June onwards, I did a comprehensive pay assessment for anyone who was hired or changed positions promoted and to place them between the minimum and the target of their range. So I wanted to, since I've been doing that work, I wanted to carry that work to what I feel is the intention of the philosophy that you all approved, was to look at those 28 people and identify 8 people for an adjustment with the average increase of 4%. All right, moving back to the compa ratio. So you'll remember I said that the compa ratio typically ranges between 80 to 120. Back in 2023, when the benchmarking was done, HR Source identified the library had a 93.3% average overall compa ratio, which is pretty good. It's pretty close to the market, just below. Our goal is 100% or more. And now in 2025, only 2 years later, we've increased that number by 10%, which is substantial, significant, impressive, that we've gotten our average compa ratio to market or above on the average on the whole for the library, which I think is really, phenomenal and work that should continue. Looking at the numbers, globally, so we have different pay grades, as I mentioned, B all the way through the ED, which is of course Kate. So this is their average compa ratio overall. And something that made me feel really good to see was that when you look at what is the median tenure of those people who are below target, the median tenure of someone who's below their pay target is 3 years or less, meaning that we are aiming to get people up to pay target very quickly. And we are consistently doing that across all the different pay grades, which is great to see. And really a great attribute of, Anna's budgeting efforts, leadership, Kate and Kelly's efforts, really moving people to target, doing what we said we were going to do back in 2022 on the whole. But really, as I've mentioned to staff in my presentations, this audit is really just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And it's really imperative of all of us, myself and others, to keep this work going forward so that no momentum is lost and we can keep making progress. So what we're going to continue to do is we're going to continue to perform pay assessments for all new hires and position changes to make sure that we are paying people appropriately, like right when they start. 2, we're going to keep moving people to pay target within 3 years or sooner, if possible, and keep making that a budget priority, which I'm very pleased to say that Anna is, making possible. So as I said to staff, and when I presented this, on the face of it, it might look like only 8 people are getting adjustments, but in reality, there's many more people who are getting moved up closer to their pay target in coming up to May, and those letters are going out very soon. Okay, continue ensuring that our recruitment processes are free from unconscious bias. I'm not going to take much credit here because Kelly and Kate have already established really robust rubrics, evaluation tools to make sure that our recruitment processes are fair and transparent and equitable to all who apply. We keep updating our salary structure annually for market alignment. This year, our structure is going up 2.5%. We're going to keep maintaining pay transparency. So we share our salary schedule with staff annually. We also post on all of our job postings the full kind of starting salary range, and we post our benefits. So we've been doing this work even before Illinois passed a law starting in 2025 to have pay transparency. We've been doing it. We're of course going to keep continuing to have pay transparency. And we're going to implement future compensation benchmarking with HR Source or another, peer organization every 3 to 4 years. And then following those salary structure adjustments, that's where this work comes back in, that these audits are done every 3 to 4 years as well as a good kind of best practice benchmark there. And I've said to the staff too, I was very, privileged to be able to do this audit. If I'm lucky enough to do it again in 3 to 4 years, I'm excited to see what new things would I've learned that would come into play, different forms of analysis and tools. And really, this is work that we're all, in together. And then finally, so those are things we're continuing. But to me, this is kind of the missing piece of the puzzle that was part of the compensation philosophy that has not yet made it back into the library, but I'm determined to bring it back. Because I think equity it's not just paying people fairly for what they do, but paying people fairly for how well you do it. Really rewarding your top talent, because that's one of our core tenets. So bringing back COLA plus merit-based components to our compensation so we can really reward for how hard people work here and bring that back in to make sure that our reviews are comprehensive and consider all those components. And so we're going to be bringing this back in the next year or so into the equation. So really that's in a nutshell, all the work that's been happening. Staff have received these presentations and the reports. I welcome any and all feedback. This was kind of a first for us. There's been lots of learning and I'm just very appreciative that I had the opportunity to do it. And the continuous learning. I mean, I told Kate, I didn't realize quite how continuous the learning would be. It's more like nonstop, but I wouldn't really have it any other way. So thank you all for listening.
Well done.
Becky, I want to say that I've read so many reports in my many years, and I found that to be one of the most thoughtful, insightful, well-constructed, and well-written reports I have ever read. Better than many I've written. So I was extremely.
And I had some great coworkers who really, you're seeing version 2 and 3.
It's always a way. It's exceptional.
How was it received by the staff?
I think I shared things in drips and drabs. I didn't want to overwhelm with the largest report at first. So I shared the executive summary before I shared the larger report. And I really leveraged our management team. They're really kind of our boots on the ground, for lack of a better phrase. And I wanted to make sure overall, the advice I got from Elise was to make sure people understand why you did it and how you did it. That's the most important thing. It's not just an audit, it's a communication exercise and making sure people understand the philosophy. And I think so much of what's been done here is about communication, the love is in the details, making sure people understood. And so, they might think, oh, I might have done it that way, but they understand why I did what I did. And to me, once they got that piece, they can relay that to their team. And I've heard, I feel like each presentation I do, it gets better. I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back and do the presentation over again. But we are having a staff meeting next week as well. So I'm going to use that as another opportunity to really hammer home some of the key points and keep getting feedback from staff and answering questions. So
And I
overall,
would also say that I like your last piece with the evaluation based, because that wasn't included prior. And I think the expectation is false to say that everybody every year is going to get that, because if you're not doing your job well, or for whatever the reason, I don't think it's an automatic just because you're existing in that job. I think that evaluation piece is
it's a
important.
key component.
I have a question. Given that it's your first year, this one's a little bit harder to measure. Tying folks' role to the job description. As you came in, have you seen that there's a lot of particularly for the people that are here for longer tenure, more scope creep in their role? Because sometimes it's hard to tie all the things that you do, especially the folks in this room that I see, but how you tie that to the job description. Because sometimes when you come in as a new person, you're able to see very clearly, well, wait a minute, these job titles don't actually fit. And then when you take it to this level where you're looking at market rates, it's yeah, but wait a minute, market rates almost don't matter if this person's performing all these other functions. So again, not measurable, but what's your impression as an HR leader coming into this facility, seeing how well the roles tie to the job descriptions?
It's a great question. I think overall, they tie pretty well. I have read all the job descriptions, and there are some where I think there's so much more that we could say and really look at. And it's hard because they're also written in such an open-ended way, sometimes a little too open-ended. It's really finding that like perfect kind of balance between like, not just, all the other things you're not mentioning, but still giving them people a chance to innovate. And I do think when we do post jobs, we have tweaked job descriptions over time to make sure that they're really accurately reflecting. Like we take any new opening as an opportunity to really reflect again, which I think is good here, which sometimes frustrates our staff because it takes a little longer to open the job because we're revising those job descriptions because we don't want to get to a place where we have to do a humongous overhaul all in one go. So I think there is scope to kind of refine. But I'd say overall, like there's some of the best worded job descriptions I've read in 10 years. But I think there's always scope for making them more accurate.
Is there a process in place for reviewing position descriptions outside of needing to fill them? Like thinking about people who have been in their jobs for some period of time, do those get reviewed on a regular basis?
They generally do as part of our benchmarking, so
Yeah.
we try to be on a regular schedule to do benchmarking. It got a little bit thrown off with COVID. We went
Yeah.
longer than we would have liked. But as Becky mentioned, every 3 to 4 years, we'd like to be doing benchmarking, and HR Source would even like us to be doing that sooner. And as part of that process, we look at job descriptions. Another thing that we did in 2023 with job descriptions was to ensure that job descriptions across departments were in alignment. So, for example, circulation has clerks and so does reference. And so those job descriptions were wildly different, and their day-to-day looks very different, but their core functions, the essential functions in the job description really are very similar. So we wanted to make sure that we could have that alignment, which then helps with building the salary structure and making sure that people are being paid equitably. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's 2025 now and 26 and 27, it's time. HR Source will want to reel us back in and
Yeah.
do some more work. So this work will certainly continue soon.
Question, so out of the 29 people you looked at, you identified 8 that sounds like we're underpaying them. I'm just wondering if you found anyone that we were overpaying them when we hired them. Like on average, you gave a 4%
Right.
increase.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's anybody that's the
Mhm.
other way around.
Like of those 28?
Right,
Or did-
of the 29, I think you said.
Oh,
28. 29 out of 8.
I can confidently say I do not feel any of those 28 are overpaid.
Over.
I mean, we kind of have a struggle in our field of trying to match the market and trying to get there. So I feel pretty strongly I would say none of them are overpaid, but really just doing the best that we can by them and, to meet the market.
When you use the term market rates, is that, and I saw a cost of living adjustment on your final slide, is that taking into consideration that we're in a demographic or a higher cost area
Yeah.
than, okay.
Definitely does, yeah.
Bravo.
Great job.
It's been a great learning experience, so thanks for the chance to do it.
Yeah, I just want to also say thank you to Becky, and acknowledge, she hinted at this, but I do want to say it more explicitly. I believe this is the first time a pay equity audit has been done in a public library. There might be one somewhere, but so this was unprecedented work, and she really created a strong process. And the fact that she did it before her first anniversary is really quite a feat. So thank you for all of that strong work and bringing all of the skills that you did from previous experience, as well as all the learning you did to create the report.
Exactly. All right, Staff Development Day.
Okay, this is a quick one. Our staff development day will be on Friday, May 9th, and we would like to invite the board to attend, recognizing that we know not all of you can attend. But we are providing staff anniversary awards starting at 11:30. That's 15 minutes later than what I put in the director's report. The agenda is still being finalized and some things shifted. So 11:30, and then if you'd like, you would be invited to join us for lunch from 12 to 1. So if you are available to attend, just let me or Jennifer know, and then if we find ourselves having, a majority, we would have to post. That if you all are coming and be an open meeting, but, I'm thinking maybe not, that might not happen, but of course, if that does, we will make it work if you all are, wanting to come.
You can be the times again.
Yes, so Friday, May 9th, 11:30 a.m. to 12 is the, presenting of the awards, and then 12 to 1 is lunch.
Okay.
And then we removed from the consent agenda and moved to new business, a discussion about the fiscal year 26 meeting dates. Was there, what was the, I believe there was a discussion about the meeting scheduled on June 19th,
Yes.
because it's the federal holiday.
Federal holiday. I will also be out of town, but that's not the.
We'll also do that.
Yeah, we've got two people coming in.
The library is open, correct?
The library is open.
Do people have thoughts about whether we should be holding a meeting on June 19th?
I think I don't know about I know the summer school is not in session those days. So they, just as a sort of comparison, what other sort of public entities are doing. It's the only
My
other-
district is closed.
Your district is closed. I think it is a way of sort of celebrating and acknowledging to not have the meeting on the 19th, but since I'm not gonna be here anyway, I recognize it's a change in schedule for a lot of people.
Was there an idea that we would just shift it or?
I think we should go ahead and whoever can come, comes. I mean, to reschedule it, I think is.
But it hasn't been posted yet, right?
No.
Correct.
Right, it hasn't been posted, so it's not it's not changing something that's published, we have to approve it.
Does anybody, I mean, do we know who can come on that day if we do hold it? I mean, I'm around.
I'm flexible that week, so I'm happy if folks think that they can adjust that week.
I'm flexible, I'm around that Monday through Wednesday, it's just not that Thursday I leave, so.
Is there a precedent for changing?
This is unprecedented. Generally, federal holidays fall on Mondays, so that's one of the reasons we meet on Thursdays, so we can avoid that. We are open, I believe, I might not be right on this, but I believe the village is open. And they have not canceled meetings on June 19th. But I didn't have a chance to research that, that's just my memory.
What do you need going forward, Stacy?
Rice, what's your schedule? I'm available that day.
So I think it's a question of whether or not we reschedule, because it's part of it is availability, part of it is an acknowledgement that it is a federal holiday and it is.
I think I'm less concerned about availability, because it sounds like enough people could be here, but more about, does this align with the EDI values that we promote and say are important to us? If it was a Jewish holiday, we would move it, I assume. I did Google to make sure there were no Jewish holidays falling on any. The least I can do. So I think about it more in that context, and again, precedent setting of what are we comfortable with? I would recommend that we look at another day that week, which means we can't approve this tonight, but can we approve it in part so that we can have a May meeting?
Yes. We can.
So
But I mean, I think if we looked at another date, it should probably be Wednesday, only because then we can keep how we do things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we can post and have it be 24.
Wednesday at
business
the earliest.
Yeah.
We could go into the following week.
We could just shift it to the 18th.
right, that's what
Seems
Amy was
pretty
saying.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion to amend the proposed meeting schedule for fiscal year 26 to adjust June 19th to June 18th, 2025?
So moved.
Thank you, Maura. Seconded by Barbara. Can I do a roll vote for this?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none. And can I now get a motion to approve the entirety as amended of the fiscal year 26? That was hard.
It was a beautiful meeting.
Thank you. Did you like how I just went right into it? I knew what I needed to do. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's Maura, seconded by Nimesh, and we'll need a roll call vote for that one.
Ms. Christian,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Unical,
Yes.
Ms. Yu.
Yes.
Excellent. And we ready for closed session?
We are ready for closed session.
Okay, can I get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, and 5 ILCS 122C3, the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in this act, including a vacancy in a public office when the public body is given power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office when the public body is given power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance. Let me get him.
So moved.
Thank you, Laura, seconded by
Second.
Janet. And roll call vote.
Ms. Christian,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Unical,
Yes.
Ms. Yu.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, we are going to take a minute to move to closed session. So if you need a break, now's a good time to take a break. Okay, coming out of closed session, we do have a motion. Can I get a motion to approve the increase in the executive director salary by 4%? Do I need to list what that would make for total compensation? If I didn't
You
do
did
that.
not.
Okay, great. Can I get a motion to approve a 4% increase in the executive director salary for the fiscal year?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
And roll call vote.
Ms. Christian,
Yes.
Ms. Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Spector Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Unical,
Yes.
Ms. Yu.
We adjusted the list. Okay, moving into agenda building for next month's meeting, we will be swearing in our new trustees. We will also be doing some recognition and resolutions for outgoing board members, and hopefully that will include Jay, and as well as Jamie, who's transitioning out of her role. We will have a statistics dashboard presentation from Fifth Star Collective. Is there anything anyone else would like to add to next month's agenda?
Do we need to put the Schaumburg visit back on the agenda now that we have our
Potentially.
petition?
And then potentially a Friends of the Library update.
Yes.
And we will need to change bank resolutions because we'll have a new trust or new treasurer.
Okay, anything else anyone wants to add? Excellent, then I will declare the meeting adjourned at 9:08 PM.
Okay.